Good evening, afternoon, morning to everyone, wherever you may be. As usual, I'm a little earlier than 9 o'clock. We've got a few minutes to go already. Still, sorry. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Billy is here. He'll probably jump off. He's been jumping off as during the summer. We're gonna have Rafi is gonna be joining us at 9 o'clock from Israel. So that would be good to have him on this 50th anniversary. The other thing I learned about August 15th is that it was the day that the Japanese surrendered to the U.S. Uh, in World War II. It was the unconditional surrender, and I think it was also well, today is the fall of Afghanistan and Kabul to the Taliban. So that's another interesting, they'll have interesting anniversaries coming up August 15th in the future. We've got quite a few of you here. Well, there you go. Billy jumped off already. We've got Robert from Slovenia. Hi, Robert. Kirsten Rowe. Hi, Kirsten. Bobby Critter. Brady Girding. Steve Dent from New Zealand. Silver Highwayman. Happy 50th Fiat anniversary. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about August 15th, 1971. Hi, Graham Hobbs. There's a few more of you who were here earlier. Apparently, there's a Canadian prime minister calls for a snap election question mark. I don't know if that's happened. Baba Joe asked earlier, would gold jewelry be worth less than sovereign gold coinage in the post hyperinflation? No, gold jewelry is good. You just need to find a bullion dealer or a scrap dealer that will pay you the best price. They usually pay you below spot, but you need to do your homework. But it will be okay. Johnny Shake, thank you for your super chat. Feeder Finance, the future of crypto wealth management. Buy feed, buy silver with the yield. Okay. Kimberly Bankal de Isar from Hatteras, North Carolina. Yeah, Cape Hatteras, those are good boats. I guess it's named after Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. Quit Addiction from Outer Mongolia. Akbay Nguyen. Kroiki. Kroikai from the Netherlands. Yeah, Billy was here a few seconds ago. He just jumped off. He went to, as you can see, he's behind me there. He likes to lie on the wooden floor because it's summer. And yeah, that's Billy. Graham Hobbs doesn't think we're going to see the 51st anniversary. I hope so. I hope it looks. I'm going to show you a few things in a minute when we start out. I'm still waiting for Rafi. He's going to be on. He should be coming in the next 4 minutes or so. Agar OG sees a new lockdown in September. Well, they could do anything anytime they want, I guess. Michelle Orlando from Italy. Hi, Michelle. Norman Burton. Hi, Norman. USA leaves and China will replace. Yeah, I think what's happening in Afghanistan, it's making all the headlines, all the activity on social media, on Twitter. But there's something going on behind the scenes. Usually, when something doesn't make sense, like Afghanistan. You know, why would the U.S. leave if they knew this could happen? We're told that they didn't calculate properly. I think it's all done by design. And yeah, the Chinese, they've gotten the upper hand there. I saw that they were meeting the Taliban in the last few weeks already. So I think this is all, they give us the public a story about Afghanistan. They say it was incompetence by intelligence, but they there's something behind the curtains that we don't know. So yeah, and we'll probably never find out really what happened there. But one thing about Afghanistan is that it's provided, I think, a lot of liquidity to the Western banking system. And why is that? Well, it's because it's one of the biggest producers of opioids, heroin, and the drug trade, as Catherine Austin Fitts has said, uh, creates a lot of liquidity in the banking system. She talks about pressing the red button. So it could be significant what's going on in Afghanistan. It also doesn't help American credibility worldwide that they've been there for 20 years. They leave and everything falls apart. So there you go. And I'm not having a go at Americans per se, but the people who run the United States. 50 years of calm before the storm hits upon financial markets. Andrew Nielsen. U.S. is setting justification for re-entering Afghanistan, says JSB. I don't think so. I don't think they're going to do that. Peter B, good evening. Peter B from West Sussex. Victoria in Seattle. Vish SWA from Victoria in Seattle. Martin Ellis, hi Martin. Great info, woof woof. Hi Mario and Billy. Patrick Gelke, Golden, hello Golden Mario and Billy Bullion. Johnny Mitchell says thank you for your help. You're welcome. My Lagarde mug. Today I've got my Silver Squeeze mug. It's got Billy there, and it's got Billy here, sorry. And there's a silverback and a few silver coins and a silver bar. Payne Weber, cash bribe to Nixon. Well, I think a lot of the Wall Street banks, at the time, they hadn't invented the speeches that politicians give to banks or brokerages where they pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we've seen that. Well, let's see. We should be getting Rafi soon. We've seen that. What's her name? Janet Yellen has been paid millions even last year to do Zoom talks with the banks on Wall Street. Stephen Oak thinks the US is pulling out of the world. Well, if the dollar is going to collapse, someone's got to. They wouldn't be able to be in 150 or 70 countries like they are. So yeah, it could be the first step out of leaving the world. Might they leave Europe? America still has a big presence in Germany, even though the war ended 76 years ago. Hi, Ben Gray. Let's see, I'm still waiting. Rafi should be coming on. He's going to be on as well. Johnny Mitchell, yeah, it's going to be on the 23rd. I think they announced at the beginning of the month. They're going to allocate 650 billion SDRs. I think about 2/3, maybe a little less, is going to be allocated to the richest countries, and the rest is going to be allocated. It's just money out of thin air created out of thin air is just as bad as fiat. Uh, Jim Marshall says the dollar will not collapse. Well, I think you mean the Federal Reserve note, really, because the dollar is really a weight of silver. It's just going to lose its value. It could collapse, actually. It could, the last stages could be a collapse. It could accelerate. So I'm going to wait a little longer here until we start looking at things. Tim Goodson, thank you for your super chat. Cliff High and Bo Pony say silver's ready to rocket. What do you say? Yeah, I been following Cliff High even when I was back in the city of London, back in 07, 08. That's when I found out about Cliff High. And a lot of his predictions or forecasts have been right, especially for cryptocurrencies. For silver, not as much, but we'll have to wait and see. I try not to think about those predictions. I just try to stack because I think the fundamentals are good. I'm not worried about the prices. Ross Martindale, I have seen John Titus's latest video. Yeah, it's very good. I recommend people watch it. It's in the best evidence. So I'm gonna start here because it looks like Rafi is late. So I'm gonna, well, this is the day today, so let's, so this is what it's all about today, the anniversary. So let's play this. So that's what it was all about there on that Sunday night. It was Sunday as well, like it is today, August 15th. And I think they no audio. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Let's do it again then. Sorry about that. What happened there? Let's see if I can do this again. Okay. So I'm going to take this off. Tell me if you can hear it now.
I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
Okay, it's just that I had my earphones on because I'm waiting for Rafi, but it looks like he's not joining us, so I'll take it off. So yeah, I mean, in a few seconds, Richard Nixon changed the whole world, and a lot of people think that that he ended the gold standard, but the gold standard actually internationally ended with World War One. The United States was on a gold standard domestically until 1933, but Europe basically got out of the gold standard because of World War One. There's so much spending that they had to do to finance the war that they suspended the gold standard. And after World War One in Europe, the public, never again got to pay with gold coins. It was all paper money. While in the US, up until the early 30s, uh, people still used gold coins. The system we had under Bretton Woods that started in 1944 uh, during that conference was a gold exchange system. Basically, the dollar was convertible by foreign treasuries into to gold, and the other currencies were fixed against the dollar, but you couldn't convert British pounds or Deutschmarks or French francs or Australian dollars. You couldn't get gold for them. You had to first uh, uh, sell them for dollars and then take the dollars and get the gold. SW asks, Mario, how is gold investments? Yeah, I mean they're up and they're running as usual. They've been in business since 1981. They're family-run business, and yes, you can use my promo code Monaco64 with them, and they'll ship the next day. The latest will be 2 days if you buy it from the UK. They will match any price out there from other bullion dealers in the UK as well. Gordon Hamilton says, yeah, Nixon didn't mean it was temporary. He meant it was transitory. The other thing I would say, um, for me, the most important thing about the what Nixon did. So basically, that was the last link that the world monetary system had to gold. So what that did by temporarily suspending the convertibility of the dollar into gold, and it's important that the suspension was of a fixed nature, right? It was $35 per ounce. It was fixed. It had been fixed since 1934, because that's when the Gold Reserve Act of 1934 revalued gold from $20.67 to 35, devalued the dollar, right? So that it had been since 1934 had been fixed at $35 per ounce, and what basically that did for me, if you look here at this chart, so this is from the from the Federal Reserve. The green line is the whole debt of the United States, not the government debt, but the government debt, but also private debt, all debts added. And then the blue line is the real GDP that's taking out inflation. And the red line is the federal debt, the government debt, right? So if you look at up until 1970, and I'm gonna go here and do something here for you to see. The data doesn't go as far back for some of these indicators, but you can see that the total debt of the United States, let's say here in 1964, for example, was just under $1 trillion. And that's not government debt, that's all debt, corporate, private. But GDP was almost $4 trillion. So the country was running very well, I would say, in terms of debt. It had a lot less debt than the GDP. And then if you go forward here, let's have a look. So, and then you see here that that was when Nixon closed the gold window and we went on a fiat currency standard. You can see how the total debt started growing. And by 1980, I think 85, 84, 85, total debt in the US, yeah, surpassed GDP. And if you look at it now, also government debt has surpassed GDP back in around 2014, 2013. So the debt has gotten out of hand. As you saw prior to the early 70s, in the 60s, the debt was less than GDP, the total debt. So, and as you can see here now, if we look, total debt is 84.5 trillion. You've got the federal debt at 28.1. That's from the first quarter. That's gone up as well, but I'm taking the latest data there from the Fed. And there's the real gross domestic product. That's at 19 trillion. So that for me has been the most significant part of this whole temporary suspension of the convertibility of the dollar into gold. It's that it's allowed the United States to go on a debt spree, and that's allowed the world to go on a debt spree as well. It's not just the US. David Yadogarians, are you preparing for stagflation? He asks. I think we already have stagflation. So, yeah, it's going to get worse. We will have stagflation, and I think we already have stagflation. I think the Michigan consumer sentiment numbers, they were really weak. I think it came out on Friday. Oh, here we go. We got Rafi is coming on. Let's have a look. Let's admit him. Okay. Where is he? There we go. Hi, Rafi.
Start video. All right.
Hi, Rafi. You're a little late.
Yeah, I was at a very important meeting.
Oh, that's okay. Don't worry.
That's on YouTube.
I can't hear you very well. Okay, now that's better.
Okay. I was at a meeting of an emergency room doctor from Cincinnati who's in Israel who was talking about things we're not allowed to discuss on YouTube.
All right, all right. I was just going over a chart here. I'll show it to you, and then because I showed it already to the viewers, and I was telling them what I think is the most important repercussion of the Nixon closing the gold window. And as this green line here, that's all the total debt of the United States, not just government. And the blue line is the GDP. And just showed them like how prior to the early 70s, GDP was way above the national debt, as you can see here. The national debt, not the national debt, but the total debt was 5 trillion. And GDP was growing, let's say, this is in the early 80s at 7 trillion. But you can see that around the early 70s and 70s, the debt started picking up and GDP didn't follow. So that's where we were. I just wondered what you think is the most important repercussion of what we've seen in the last 50 years when Nixon took us. It was actually a gold exchange system, not a gold standard.
I don't know if there's one thing, but I'm reminded of something Ron Paul said when he was on I think he said he was talking to Ronald Reagan when Reagan was president, and Reagan told him, I think he was on Air Force One, that no society that left the gold standard, meaning no society that ever practiced inflationary finance, ever really survived long term. because inflation just eats the society up. It starts with the small level of corruption that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I mean, forget about finance. Don't forget about it. But finance is only one aspect of it. Inflation corrupts everything about the way people live their lives. The ones who they're part of it and they don't escape it and they don't see it. But just look at the way the world is behaving. This is all possible because of inflationary finance. None of these restrictions that are happening would be possible without inflationary finance, because people wouldn't be able to be fed without going to work. But now you can do that because you can keep inflating, but eventually that will stop. So the most important thing is look what's happening all over the world now because of what Nixon did.
Yeah.
That's the problem. I mean, look at this insanity.
Well, this other chart here that I wanted to show people is because we talk about Nixon and the blame is put on Nixon, of course, because he was the one who pulled the trigger. But if you look at the U.S. gold reserves, it grew in the first half of the 20th century, mainly because the U.S. Had almost all the gold after World War One and World War Two, because it produced all the stuff for the warring nations, and that's why the U.S. became the reserve currency in Bretton Woods. But as you can see here, from the early 50s, those gold reserves started dropping, and you could see that in the 60s they were dropping precipitously, and I think it was because the major trading nations like France, Germany, Japan, Italy, UK, they knew that the US was inflating, so they wanted to get the gold before the price went up. As you can see here, the price went from 35 to 800. Well, here it was 800. This is on a closing basis, but it got up to almost 900 here in 1980. So that was one of the reasons why, because if Nixon had two choices in 1971, or three, actually, he could have raised interest rates so that the flow of gold would have stopped, the flow out of gold would have stopped. He could have devalued the dollar versus gold. He could have revalued gold up to $100, for example, or he could have closed the gold window, and he chose the wrong choice, in my opinion. And and as you saw earlier, the situation wasn't that bad in terms of debt and GDP. If you look compared to today in the 60s and 70s. So it looked like they panicked for something that they really didn't need to panic, in my opinion. What do you think, Rafi?
Well, it was Nixon instituted price controls because of 4% price inflation.
Yeah,
Um, well, I don't think they had to really I mean, it was there was a discussion on whether to detether the dollar from gold for many years before that, from the late 60s, I think. And this was more just like an excuse to finally do it, it seems like. I think the London gold pool fell apart in 1968, and then 1971 he said temporarily we're suspending, but that really gave them the opportunity to keep inflating, and I'm sure that's what he really wanted. I mean,
mm,
what he said in like a 15-minute rehearsed speech to the nation interrupting Bonanza, that's just for public
yeah,
consumption. It doesn't mean anything.
yeah,
He wanted to be able to inflate more, to spend more, to get reelected. That's all he really cared about. That's all politicians care about, and that's what he did.
mm,
So I don't think it was a financial decision as much as it was a political decision for him, and he thought he could spend more by doing this, and he was probably right. But then he got
yeah,
kicked out for cheating anyway.
yeah. This is the excuse me, I've had a bit of a cold. Um,
Uh-oh. Is that
yeah,
legal?
yeah, I don't know. So this is the budget deficit. So this is from Trading Economics. And if you look at here, 1948, there was a surplus. There was a few surpluses there in the 50s. but and the deficits, they were running deficits, and in the 60s, and I think that's why the other countries started asking for gold, getting rid of their dollar reserves, because they knew they were inflating here, the budget deficits that they were running. I think the last surplus was 69. But and then if you move forward here, this is what we have today. I mean, during the Clinton years, there's a few surpluses, but they were like technical. I think the national debt actually increased in those years, so I think you need to ignore that. But look at the deficits now. I mean, back then, the most you could see, as you saw here, was like a minus 2.8, and nowadays minus 2.8 would be really low. And it seems to be something that all political parties do, right? And
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to get better. So that's been the other consequence of not having the gold anchor. Government can spend limitlessly almost, and the Federal Reserve obliges. So let's and now here, this is the trade deficit. I did the 50s and 60s up to the early 70s. And yeah, they had a few years here. This is in millions. So we had 500 million deficit, trade deficit here in the late 60s. But most of the time it was balanced. So it wasn't that bad. But then you go forward here to nowadays, since 19, you can see here, 1971, and then it all goes. I mean, look at here now, we've got a deficit of trade deficit of 75 billion per month. So it's really like changed things. And the problem now as well is that every country has to earn dollars, so they will compete. They'll try to make everything cheaper than Americans. And that's the other reason why we've seen, how can I say, I'll bring this out. We've seen that the manufacturing in the US has really fallen through the floor, like a manufacturing employment. And this guy here, John Mueller, this is in the New York Sun. He talks about how what we've had is a dollar, up until 1971 was a gold exchange system that's actually been around, was around in 1922 after the Genoa Agreement. But he also goes on to talk about this here: to increase our manufacturing jobs to the peak of 17 million from today's 12 million, it would be necessary to repay most of the outstanding dollar reserves. If President Biden is as ineffectual as most of his recent predecessors in responding to the reserve currency curse, he will have to get used to the title of ex-president. So there's something here from the Fred. And there you go, in manufacturing jobs. So you can see that it kind of topped in that period in the 70s. I think it was about almost at 20 million, and it's been dropping ever since. And we had the pandemic here. It dropped to the lowest level, I guess, since the 40s, or even since that. It's picked up, but I don't think I think it's gonna keep going down. So that's, I think, the other consequence of Nixon closing the gold window. It's been because it's been the loss of all the manufacturing base, of all the well-paying jobs in the United States. What do you think, Rafi?
Yeah, that inflationary finance definitely part of it. I mean, there's also the fact that that Asia became suddenly, a manufacturing superpower because China got rid of communism, not in name, but after the Great Leap Forward in the late 50s and early 60s, and then after the Cultural Revolution, when Mao was finished killing all of the 50 million people he was busy murdering. Once he was done with that, he decided maybe I should let the people actually do something. and they did it. They took over the manufacturing jobs because
Yeah.
they were able to do it for cheaper. They didn't have as many regulations,
Yeah.
and they could accept less money. And it was a combination of inflationary finance in America and China being unleashed by
Yeah.
Mao and Deng Xiaoping and those dictators. So you have on one side the U.S. pushing jobs out, and the other Asia pulling them in because they could just do them cheaper. And we don't
Yeah.
have that kind of, because of labor unions and regulations and these kinds of barriers to employment in the U.S. Manufacturing in the U.S. is just not economical.
No.
That'll change when the dollar collapses, and Asia doesn't want the dollars anymore. They'll have to start making things in the United States and tear down all these regulations, or people are going to starve to death. But that's going to have to wait for the collapse.
Yeah, and I brought this chart back up again because China, they joined the WTO, World Trade Organization, right here, December 2001. And the US had almost 16 million manufacturing jobs, and now the US has got 12 million. So it lost 4 million manufacturing jobs ever since China joined the WTO. So there you go. And I think that was, I'm not going to get political, and I don't like being political, but that was one of the things that I think the previous president was trying to do to bring back the jobs, manufacturing jobs, but that's out the window now. Uh, the other thing I wanted to point out to the viewers is that I have a blog. It's called Maneko 64. Let me bring it up. Maneko64.net. And I wrote an article uh, last week, and it's called A Sunday to Remember. So there's the blog. I'll click on it. Um, yeah, it's about 1,200 words, and I write about what happened in 1971. So if you guys want to have a read, I put a link to this article below in the description. And if you scroll through Maneko64.net, there's an article by Rafi as well that I posted there. Do you remember about the dance?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I wrote another one recently about something that happened to my wife in the grocery store, but
Mm.
I don't know if I
Yeah, I
sent
saw
that.
that. Okay, let's see. Look at some questions here, Rafi. Hey Mario, what's your mate's opinion on the? We don't want to get too much into this, John Smith. He wants to know what you think about the medical. Uh, how can you say this medical procedure? I think you're against it as well, aren't you, Rafi?
I'm against anybody putting anything in their body by compulsion from authorities.
Yeah, that's right. And something that hasn't been, I guess, doesn't have a track record also. No says just keep stacking, even more important now. So yeah, what do you think, Rafi, of the the pullback in gold, the sharp pullback last Sunday? I think at one point gold got down to 1660 on my trading system, which was like just over $100 from the Friday
Really,
close.
1660.
Yeah,
I didn't
that's
see it
where it
get down.
got to. I
I,
did on my IG.com. That's where it got down to. So,
Mhm.
but I don't know. I made a video yesterday that I think that that was like a bottom because we actually finished a week higher than the previous week, even though we had that huge drop.
I don't know where the bottom is. I mean, I follow certain technical traders just to see what their opinions are. And they're right sometimes and they're wrong other times. So my trading strategy, I don't try generally to call bottoms or tops at certain prices. More, I just try to gauge what I'm feeling at any given time. And if I feel that I'm getting way too nervous and like and my emotional well-being depends on a bottom happening now,
Mm,
and and I'm starting to lose my equanimity, then I decide I need more cash. So I take what I do is I take the better positions in my portfolio, and I either sell them or swap them for calls and pocket some cash,
yeah,
just to calm myself down and to be able to buy if a certain technical level gets breached. Because look, if there's probably a lot of stops at 1677, we all know it, because that's been the support since June 2020, and it's
yeah,
been hit like 4 or 5 times now. So there's a lot of stops there. That's
yeah,
undeniable. And if that level does get hit by some kind of COMEX attack at 3 a.m. one day, then
yeah,
you're gonna trigger a lot
yeah.
of stops. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but if that
Right.
happens, I need to be ready for that emotionally, so I can say, yeah, I'm gonna buy. And in order to be able to buy, I need to have that cash,
Yeah.
which
What
is
about those people who don't trade? Those people who just stack? Because I assume you're talking about like trading futures and ETFs there.
no, I'm mostly talking about mining stocks. I
Oh,
don't
the
use
mining. Yeah.
mining stocks, the companies, because
Yeah.
they get the most volatility from this, and they still are real pieces of capital. But look, if you if you're a stacker, I mean, the best way to do it is forget about all this stuff, and just take a portion of your salary or whatever you earn every month, and
Mm.
just it doesn't matter what the price is, because
Dollar
over
cost
if you
average.
do
Yeah.
this over time, it's going to average out anyway. What's the difference?
Yeah. Yeah. One of my viewers sent me this earlier today before the live stream. This it's called it's from New Republic. The truth behind the great bacon shortage of 2022. And It's to do with these new California rules that are coming into existence. And California consumes like 15% of all the bacon in the US. And it would apply to farmers of pork in other states. So it could create like price rises of pork and bacon. So that's another, maybe we could talk a little bit about the inflation side of things, Rafi. I know you've been covering it quite a bit. I know this wouldn't be a problem in Israel, I guess, the bacon. Just a joke.
No, I've never had bacon. Kind of
Yeah,
disappointing. I hear it's delicious,
yeah.
uh, but I will never have it, and there's nothing I can do about that. But enjoy. What regulations is California imposing?
Well, here we go. Let's go through it here. It's to do with treating the animals humanely.
Okay.
So here we go. Where is it? California prepares to implement a wide-ranging standards mandating more humane housing for animals like egg-laying chickens and pigs, and the country's top outlets have been filled with dire predictions about the coming bacon apocalypse. This panic is different from prior ones. Production costs for hog producers and the price of pork for consumers could actually go up this time, unlike the prior fear mongering when the shortages never materialized. In part, that's because this piece of legislation is different from prior state legislations intended to reform factory farming. It would change not only how California's pork producers need to raise their pigs, but how any state selling meat to California's 40 million residents need to raise them. So that's basically what it is in a nutshell.
Oh,
And
so California is prohibiting the importation of pork that they decide is unethical. That's the point.
that's right. Yeah, that's right. And
Oh man,
I
it's
think
like
Iowa and South Carolina are one of the biggest pork exporting states.
uh that's sort of like what they're doing with taxes. I think they're saying if you ever earned a degree in California, you're gonna have to pay taxes, state taxes, no matter where you are
I
in the
see.
country. Is this some kind of like liberal cash grab? So doing it
Yeah,
with with pig farming also. Wherever you get your pig from, they have to be sourced for a way we
yeah.
approve. Okay.
Yeah. So
So yeah,
Tim Goods. Tim Goodson, thank you for your super chat. He says, Aloha, Rafi. How do you filter through info when forecasting socio-economic outlooks? Seems like a lot of misinfo by scientists supposed to help us.
Social economic outlook.
Yeah,
What do you mean exactly by that? How do I decide what information I take seriously and
yeah,
what
yeah, I guess
I don't?
so.
With economics and finance, it's much easier because economics and finance is really just pure logic. I mean, it's supply and demand. The sources that I trust that I know that are logical, and I look in the mainstream media for just data um, that I will do my own interpretation of, and I'm not going like I don't read any mainstream media articles for their interpretation of data. I just want to know what the numbers are, what they're saying they are.
Yeah,
I can use my own mind to determine what these numbers mean based on logic. It's much harder when I'm dealing with what's going on with the health stuff going on there, and I don't know what to believe. So I just kind of shut it all off and wait for all this to pass. But yeah, I can rely on my own logic and what makes sense.
I see. I see. Um, So there's a lot of talk recently about the CPI that it's topping, but you wrote about this in your latest newsletter about how you think I think it's rent and some other prices are gonna go up into the end of the year, and you think they're not gonna CPI is not gonna stop rising.
Yeah, I don't think the CPI is going to stop rising. I think it's just going to keep going up the next few months, unless they can just completely fabricate the numbers out of pure cloth, which is possible. But even then, that will only accomplish so much because once food bills start obviously going up, no one's going to pay attention to the CPI anymore. But assuming that there is some kind of nugget of truth in the CPI and it's not totally made up, then a third of the CPI is based on rent. And even the mainstream media now is saying rent is going to go much, much higher. It already is. And if you look at any of the industry data, I mean, I took a Zillow Excel spreadsheet of every city in the country, and beside except for maybe New York and San Francisco, they're all up like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9%, even double digits in some cities. So I can't say exactly why rent isn't rising in the CPI yet. There's some kind of statistical fluke, I don't know, but like
Yeah,
even the mainstream economists who are like all CNBC and they believe the Fed, they're like this is gonna come higher very soon, and it's gonna be sticky and it's gonna bleed into the CPI very heavily. Meanwhile, you've got shipping prices that are still skyrocketing and they don't stop. Yeah, there's going to be no respite in
yeah.
the CPI.
Yeah, I saw as well that the biggest sport in the world, hadn't even heard of it. It's in China. I forgot the name of it, but they're kind of not shutting down completely, but just because of a few of these cases of this disease. So that's another problem there. I think it's far from over. So what I've got here is from Fred again. And this I learned how to do this and look at this from John Titus of Best Evidence. So the uh, the left axis, that's the deposits of all commercial banks in the US. That's the red line. And then I inserted here the blue line, which is the Fed's no, this is the deposits of commercial banks with the Fed, the blue line, and the green line is the Fed's balance sheet. And what John Titus was saying that prior to here, which was September 11, 2019, which is an interesting date. Prior to that, private deposits at commercial banks, they went up no matter what the Fed's balance sheet or no matter what commercial bank deposits with the Fed did. So what he was trying to tell us here is that yes, we had QE after the '08 crisis, but it didn't really impact much consumer, deposits, private deposits. So that's why we didn't have the inflation. But this time around, though, look at how the M2 or private deposits are following the Fed's balance sheets and commercial bank deposits. The drop here of the blue, that's to do with the reverse repo. But so what he's saying is basically that the QE now is going to the public. It's like helicopter money. While prior to this date here, which was to September 2019, it wasn't. And this is when the repo crisis started. And yeah, so this is really interesting. So I don't think we're going to see a stop to the consumer price rises, mainly because of this. And I recommend people go to Best Evidence and watch John Titus's video about this. I think it's about the guy from, yeah, I forgot the name. It's about the CEO of BlackRock and the head of the
Fink?
BIS.
Larry Fink?
Yeah, the title is Larry Fink, and let's bring it up. So
Right,
so
that is one of the most interesting charts I've ever seen. That
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
it's like rivers converging, rivers of
yeah,
inflation converging into a
yeah.
huge raging stream.
So this is the video here. You see, he did. I learned from him. You see, he didn't put. He did these two. Hold on, where is it? You see, he did these, and then I added the balance sheet assets because then you can see it. This is he's just got the two deposits. So this is Larry and Karsten's excellent pandemic. So yeah, I highly recommend people watch this. And then I actually sent to him the chart that I did with the Fed's balance sheet, and he said, "Oh, thanks, Mario. I hadn't thought about putting that on because this looks like it's going to stop, but it isn't because the balance sheet is increasing as well. This is just like an anomaly because of the reverse repo that the Fed's doing."
Mhm. Wonder when that's going to break.
Yeah, I know. It's over $1 trillion. So we've got here, Gur OG, thank you for your super chat. He says, Rafi, is Israel so bad that the alternative media is, as the alternative media is saying, with the forced and chip
So
children? I don't know if
but
they're chipping children.
uh, I haven't I haven't heard about that. I've heard things about that. But the problem is I'm trying not to pay attention to the Israeli media at all because it just drives me crazy. But my personal situation is I cannot send my kids to public schools this year because there's going to be a certain government official at each school that are going to encourage kids to do a certain procedure. And I don't want my kids exposed to that. So I have to keep them all home while working and homeschooling. And there's a lot of parents who are with us, and it is very terrifying what is going on here. And I'm just trying to get through it mentally. And I understand for the first time in my life what it's like to be persecuted. Real.
Yeah, yeah. I think they're trying to scare people, coerce people. I try to avoid the mainstream media here in the UK as well, but sometimes you need to read a little bit the papers. There was an article the other day in the Telegraph, and it actually said that the government in Scotland is going to allow children as young as 4 to decide, at school to tell their teachers without their parents knowing about it, to tell their teachers, oh, I want to change my name or I want to change my gender. They're saying that they're going to allow children as young as 4. And I heard someone talk about this in the alternative, a guy called, it's a good YouTube channel. I recommend Hugo Talks. And he said, this is just silly. They're just trying to wind people up with these things, and I think some of it is what you're talking about in Israel is not winding people up. I can understand why you wouldn't want to send your children to school if they're looking to do that to children without their parents' consent. I think it's disgusting, really.
Mhm. Well, if we want to hook this back into inflation, how is inflation connected to all this? Because something like this could never happen in a private school system. I mean, in order for this to happen, you need a centralized education system that's corrupted with government money, where the orders come from on top and they just get progressively sillier and stupider. And then everyone at the school who relies on this money now, who relies on this inflationary finance, don't want to lose their jobs, so they have to go along with it. This is how it poisons society. This is how inflation poisons society directly into your children's minds and destroys the family structure. So yeah, it starts with a little bit of free money at the end of a gold standard, and 50 years later, here we are.
Yeah, and the in the UK, I know a lot of people here in the UK uh, worship kind of the NHS, and I can understand why because up until recently it did work well, and I've used the NHS, I've paid into it through my taxes, but if the system here were private, and I'm not saying it should be like in the US where a lot of it is really expensive, but maybe like in Europe and in Switzerland and in France, it's like you pay into a private insurance and it works really well. But here with the NHS, it's like it's the same thing. If the doctors don't play along with what the government tells them to do, they lose their jobs. But in a private system, the government can't tell private doctors what to do. So yeah, that's all about the inflation, I would say. And the UK, they've been on the road to ruin, the inflation road. It's been since 1914. So yeah, the US, I would say it's more since the 60s and 70s, uh, and maybe even 1933. That didn't help when they closed when they banned Americans from owning gold. That was the start of the inflation as well, I would say.
Yeah.
Billy is snoring. Yeah, Billy was on the sofa earlier, but he jumped off. There he is, Rafi, because he's in the summer. He likes to lie down on the wooden floor. So there you go. He's dreaming of apes on parade. Chris Conman, super chat, thank you. He says, Rafi, what would happen to the US dollar or government credit if an audit was performed at Fort Knox and it revealed that only a fraction of the gold existed? Thanks.
um, it would take the dollar down very quickly. I mean, what we have to realize about the dollar is that dollars bid on gold. Gold doesn't bid on dollars. The value of the dollar is the reason that the dollar can buy anything is that it is still exchangeable for some amount of gold. And if that gold is revealed not to be there, then it will be exchangeable for even less, very, very quickly, and its purchasing power will fall overnight if that audit is performed. So, I mean, the danger is if there really is nothing there because they sold it all. And if that's true, that's kind of what I'm rooting for, because I want the US government to have as few real resources as possible. And yeah, that would be the worst situation for dollar holders, but longer term, it's much better if the US government completely runs out of all financial options and just has to crumble. Then you can rebuild from scratch, much better, get rid of these old foundations and build something new, rather than have them have some resources and be able to regroup again with all the
Yeah.
technology they already have.
I made a video earlier this week because of what's happening in Afghanistan, and I compared it to because the Soviets were there from 79 to 89, and they had to withdraw from Afghanistan. And at the same time, the Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, communism was collapsing. And
Yeah.
then Soviet Union collapsed in 91, became a basket case. And I actually think what's happening very few people in the mainstream are talking about it, but I think this is just the beginning of the collapse of not the United States and the American people or anything, but the kind of deep state control we've had probably since they assassinated JFK in '63. I think that's what it will mean. And I think Afghanistan is just the first domino to fall. And I think there's a lot more behind it. And I think it's because the US is not going to be able to finance all these foreign adventures anymore. And I think China, and people might be critical of China, and I am as well. You know, they're no saints, but they basically are the creditor for the United States.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean about JFK. There's one thing I wanted to say about JFK and the fact that he got assassinated. If you can credit any U.S. president with saving the world, literally saving the world from physical destruction, it would be JFK. I'm not sure if he saved it, but he's the best candidate for someone who might have saved the world, especially in the Cuban Missile Crisis, and and climbing off and calming Khrushchev down, or was it Khrushchev or Brezhnev? I don't Khrushchev maybe. And he stopped the nuclear exchange, and Ron Paul talks about that also. So he the fact that he was assassinated, and the fact that he might have very well saved the world from destruction shows you the kind of people that we're up against in this deep state stuff. So
Yeah.
the collapse of the American empire is a very positive development in my eyes. I'm not a fan of the Taliban, certainly not. But getting but the crumbling of the U.S. empire is a good sign, and it should continue. And hopefully, America will be back in its own borders and dealing with its own problems, and it'll be better for everybody.
Yeah, so we Girl OG from Norway, another super chat. He's thank you, Girl OG, and he says Rafi is a wise man, not only on the economic side but life itself. Same to you, Mario. Does Rafi have a YouTube channel? So there you go. I've just shared it. You just started out, haven't you, Rafi, the YouTube channel?
Yeah, I just started out. You can find me Rafi Farber, and I'm trying to make a video every other day or so. I just finished one today. It's more on biblical numbers and stuff, just for fun, based on this 50-year anniversary. So I talk about some interesting stuff, and I try to cover some interesting news pieces, put some nice things in there, some editing, and hopefully you like it.
Yeah, I like the rent inflation one from yesterday. That was interesting, or 2 days ago. And I see you've got one here. Leave Andrew Cuomo alone.
That's
I
a
haven't seen
parody of the
that.
Leave Britney Alone video. That was a viral
Oh,
video about
okay.
Britney Spears a few years
Yeah,
ago that I made fun of.
yeah, that's good. That's good. So there you go, guys. I recommend everyone subscribe to Rafi's channel. Yeah, it's a good channel. Just started out. I remember when I started out. I think late 2015. So yeah. What else? Have we got some more questions here? Oh, the on JFK, one thing I would say is that he wanted to like really I think he said he wanted to break the CIA into pieces. He wanted to really because he knew the CIA was bad news, and he also sacked Dulles, who was the head of the CIA, and I think he sacked him. I think the year before he was assassinated. Is it
Right.
what was his first name? Dulles.
John.
Uh, John Foster Dulles. Yeah,
Yeah, he was
and I
also
think
involved in the BIS, I think, from the book that I'm reading that you recommended, The
yeah,
Power of
yeah,
Basel. He
and I
shows up
and I
there.
think his brother as well was like Secretary of State. They're the Dulles brothers. They're very well connected to the bankers and the intelligence community. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think since that was like a coup d'état, uh, November 22nd, 1963, and I think those people have been in power ever since. And I think it's another reason why we had the inflation, because if you look at the '60s, you know, the spending went through the roof after Kennedy left. Not that it wasn't already starting under him, but it got out of control. So yeah, so I think it's really significant if, like you said, if the deep state can't finance itself anymore. I think it would be the end of these people, and that's not a bad thing for the U.S. It would go back to how it should be, a constitutional republic, and hopefully it would help the rest of the world, because unfortunately the rest of the world is kind of gotten a little bit of blowback, I think, from the American empire. Oh yeah, it's Alan Dulles. Yeah,
Mhm.
Alan Dulles, some of the uh,
What might end up happening, I'm thinking about the United States, is that when it really does go bankrupt, I mean, it might not hold together as a federal entity. It might split into 50 different countries and then go
yeah.
back to something closer to the Articles of Confederation.
Ooh.
Uh, that might end up happening because I don't see the federal government staying sovereign enough to hold everything together.
Yeah, and why do you need Washington D.C. really, if you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, most of the senators are just insane. You have these people like Maxine Waters calling for riots and just
Yeah,
like nobody in Congress seems to understand anything except maybe Rand Paul and maybe like one or two other people, minimally. But there's nothing good comes out of Washington D.C. anymore. So like just get rid of it and split the country up
yeah,
into 50 states and have them trade. That's all.
yeah. Let me just get Billy. Someone is asking where Billy is. Billy. There he is. There he is. There's Billy, guys. He was asleep. We woke him up. Okay. All right. Um, so someone asked how he was. District of Cronies. Waters is a nutcase. Okay. Someone's saying here, have you heard of Nazara or Jazara? Rafi, I've heard of it, but I've
No.
been hearing it for a few years. Well, it's a talk about there is a plan to take America back to a constitutional republic. That's the Nasara plan. But people have been talking about it for over 20 years. But who knows? Uh, who knows? Uh, so we got a couple of minutes. We got a question here from Blast from the Past. Why didn't gold price adjust to all the spending going on in the 60s? It stayed at 35 and should have been going up. Do you want to answer that, Rafi?
What you mean
Or
from between 1933 and 1971? Why
no,
did it stay at
in
35?
in the 60s, when you had all the guns and butter, from 1960 to 71, how did they manage to keep it at 35? I can
Oh,
answer that,
yeah, you
but
go
if
for
you
it.
want, yeah, yeah. Well, it was basically called the London Gold Pool. At the time, you couldn't trade gold in the US. You can only buy gold for jewelry. So the London gold market in Europe, that was the major world market. And the London gold pool was the major treasuries of the world, along with the US. Well, the US pushed for it, and France, and I think Germany, Belgium, Italy, all the major Western countries decided to protect the price of gold from rising above 35. So when it got up, when it was uh, when it looked like it was going to go above 35, they used to sell gold in the London gold market. And when it went below, they bought it. That's how they kept it. But by 1968, these countries were tired of helping out the US. They were losing a lot of physical gold. So that London gold pool collapsed in 1968. I think the price started going up in 1968. It came back down. And then by 1971, the US couldn't hold it anymore at 35. And that's what happened. Is that
Yeah,
how you remember it, Rocky?
I wasn't alive. I don't remember
No,
it at
but
all.
from studying it, from reading about it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, logically, it's simple. If the price went up, they sold it, and
Yeah,
they ran
yeah,
out, so they stopped selling
yeah,
it, and then
yeah.
it broke.
And it wasn't a covert manipulation. It was out in public. So because they wanted to keep the price, the other way they could have kept the price at 35 is by controlling interest rates. But as we know, politicians and they don't like very high rates. Um, Another
Now,
one
now they
here.
do it with paper futures instead. Now they do it with
Yeah,
paper futures, and
yeah.
I'm trying to take delivery on a silver contract, and that's an ongoing thing, and hopefully I'll succeed by the end of the month.
Silver Highwayman, I'll let you answer this, Rafi. Will the SDR replace the US dollar, which would keep the system running as if it as is with no significant changes?
Oh, that's an easy answer. No.
I agree with you. SDR is just a basket of trashy fiat currencies, of which the dollar is the biggest component. So
Yeah.
if the dollar collapses, the SDR will be even worse, I would say.
No, but gold is money. SDRs are just money substitutes, just like any other
Yeah,
currency.
yeah. Uh, can you ask Rafi if he plans on staying in Israel with all that is going on?
Yes, I plan on staying in Israel no matter what. I'm not recommending anybody come here. It's the situation is bad here. And I mean, I'm staying here because I know what's going to happen in America pretty much. I don't know exactly when, but when the dollar collapses and everyone that is being placated with welfare can no longer buy food, they're going to start to riot, and I don't want to be anywhere near there.
Hmm.
And I can only and look, the Jewish people are my family. They're all pretty nuts right now, and sometimes family can really make you angry, and they are right now,
Hmm.
and I don't appreciate it, and it's scary. But I'm staying with my family because I'm afraid of being anywhere else, and hopefully, when this is all over, I can travel again. But I'm hunkering down. I'm not moving.
Okay. Marshall Topola, what do you think a $10 gold certificate issued in 1907 will be worth after reset? Marshall, I don't think it's going to be worth anything because it's just a paper certificate. So it was worth something back in 19 up until 1933. You could exchange that for almost half an ounce of gold, but unfortunately, it's paper. What do you think, Rafi?
I don't know. It depends what you can get for it on eBay for as a collectible.
Yeah, I would say it's just an eBay collectible. That's right. So, Rafi, thank you for being on the live stream. And anything else you'd want to tell the viewers? Final thoughts.
Yeah, we're I think we're headed into the home stretch here. It seems to me that the turn from when gold is controlled by monetary policy guessing to the pivot when gold leads the market higher, leads inflation higher, is very close at hand. It could be after a break of 1670, or that might not happen, but it's getting very close now. I think it's measured in months, and we got to be mentally prepared for the fallout that comes afterwards, which means get your affairs in order, protect your family, and have some food, have some water, do what you can, and stay calm. And I'm pretty much talking to myself here.
Yeah, I'm trying to do the same. Try to look after yourself. Try to live as normally as possible. Switch off from the mainstream media. And yeah, having gold and silver outside the system is also like not financing the people in charge, because when you put your monetary savings in the bank, you're actually lending them the funds. So, with that, I want to wish everyone a great rest of the weekend if you're in the US, a great week if you are in the Far East or Australasia, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.
All right.
All right. Let me end the stream.